ExamPrep.School, Montana Property Insurance Exam, exam code InsMT-Prop03 or OPMT-Prop03. There are 4 practice exams in this series. This video covers Practice Exam 1. The first 20 questions are free. In this video, we will be covering the following major categories for Practice Exam 1. Montana statutes and rules common to property and casualty. Montana statutes and rules common to property and casualty only. Montana statutes and rules pertinent to property insurance only. Policy provisions and property contract law. Property insurance terms and related concepts. Types of property policies. Let's walk through the format. I'll read each question and its choices. Let's get started. Question 1. In a standard H03 policy, to satisfy the coinsurance requirement for coverage A, the insured must choose a limit equal to at least what percentage of the dwelling's replacement cost? A. 50%, B. 60%, C. 80%, D. 100%. A countdown circle appears in the top right. Once it completes, the answer is revealed. You can pause at any time if you'd like longer to think. If you'd like additional practice covering more topics, see the description for our book. The correct answer is C. The coinsurance clause in a homeowner's policy requires the coverage A limit to be at least 80% of replacement cost before depreciation to receive full replacement cost settlement. Reason A is not correct. A 50% figure is the default limit for personal property, not the coinsurance requirement for dwelling coverage. Reason B is not correct. A 60% threshold is not specified in the coinsurance provision for coverage A. Reason D is not correct. While choosing 100% of replacement cost exceeds the requirement, the minimum coinsurance threshold is 80%. Question 2. Which of the following is considered an other structure under coverage B of a homeowner's policy? A. Attached sunroom. B. Landscaping and shrubs. C. Detached tool shed. D. Personal tent on lawn. The correct answer is C. Coverage B applies to structures that are separate from the dwelling, such as a detached tool shed, as long as they are on the insured premises. Reason A is not correct. An attached sunroom is part of the dwelling and falls under coverage A, not coverage B. Reason B is not correct. Landscaping and shrubs are not structures and are excluded from coverage B. Reason D is not correct. A personal tent is movable property, not a separate structure on a foundation. Question 3. In a standard homeowner's policy, coverage C provides personal property coverage equal to what percentage of the coverage A limit? A. 40%, B. 70%, C. 50%, D. 90%. The correct answer is C. Coverage C is automatically set at 50% of the coverage A dwelling limit, unless the insured selects a different amount in the declarations. Reason A is not correct. A 40% figure is not used by standard homeowners forms for personal property coverage. Reason B is not correct. A 70% limit exceeds the typical default and is not provided by standard form. Reason D is not correct. A 90% allocation is not a standard default percentage in homeowners policies. Question 4. Which event would trigger coverage D, loss of use under a homeowner's policy? A. Theft of jewelry from the bedroom. B. Roof repair during an extended vacancy. C. Temporary relocation due to a covered dwelling loss. D. Defense costs from a liability suit. The correct answer is C. Coverage D applies when a covered peril renders the residence uninhabitable, necessitating additional living expenses and fair rental value reimbursements. Reason A is not correct. Theft is a coverage C issue and does not trigger additional living expense coverage. Reason B is not correct. Roof repair during vacancy is a maintenance issue, not a covered peril causing loss of use. Reason D is not correct. Liability defense costs are covered under liability sections, not loss of use. Question 5. Under an H03 policy, the perils insured against for coverage A are best described as A. Only the named perils listed in the policy. B. Basic perils with no additional coverage. C. Broad form perils plus water damage and collapse. D. All perils except those that are specifically excluded. The correct answer is D. Coverage A under H03 is open perils coverage, meaning it insures against all perils unless the peril is explicitly excluded in the policy. Reason A is not correct. Limiting coverage only to named perils describes a dwelling broad form, not H03. Reason B is not correct. Basic perils only applies to a basic dwelling form, not the open perils, H03. Reason C is not correct. Broad form perils plus specific extras describe H02 or H05, not H03. Question 6. A homeowner with an H02 policy returns home to find the kitchen floor soaked after a dishwasher hose burst and later discovers that heavy rainstorm water backed up through the sewer line into the basement, damaging the flooring. Under the H02 policy, which loss would be covered? A. Damage from floodwaters backing up through the sewer line into the basement. B. Mold growth in the basement due to sewer backup. C. Water seeping through foundation cracks after heavy rains. D. Water damage from the burst dishwasher hose flooding the kitchen. The correct answer is D. The correct answer is water damage from a burst internal appliance supply line, which qualifies as accidental discharge of water, a named peril under H02. Backup, seepage, and mold from excluded water perils are not covered. Reason A is not correct. Backup through a sewer line is excluded as a flood peril not named under H02. Reason B is not correct. Mold resulting from an excluded water loss is not covered under the named perils policy. Reason C is not correct. Foundation seepage is an excluded water peril not listed on the H02 form. Question 7. A tenant insured under an H04 policy files a claim after a burglar breaks in and steals a gaming console and its controllers. Under the policy, which loss should be covered? A. Replacement cost of the broken window glass damaged during the break-in. B. Reimbursement for lost rental income during repairs. C. Repair costs for damaged built-in kitchen cabinets owned by the landlord. D. Cost to replace the stolen gaming console and controllers. The correct answer is D. The correct answer is replacement of personal property belonging to the tenant, which is insured under H04. Structural damage to landlord's property, window glass losses, and rental income losses are not covered by this renter's form. Reason A is not correct. Structural damage to the dwelling is the landlord's responsibility and not covered by H04. Reason B is not correct. Lost rental income is not a loss covered by a personal property renter's form. Reason C is not correct. Built-in cabinets are landlord-owned fixtures and not insured under the renter's policy. Question 8. A condominium unit owner covered by an H06 policy has built-in bookshelves attached to unit walls, custom carpeting inside the walls, and shared hallway carpeting outside the unit. After a covered peril, which item would be insured as part of building property? A. Built-in bookshelves attached to the interior walls of the unit. B. Personal artwork displayed on the unit's walls. C. Carpeting in the shared hallway outside the unit. D. A loose area rug inside the unit that the owner rolls up. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is built-in improvements within the unit, which H06 covers as building property. Personal articles, common area property, and non-permanent items are outside the building property coverage. Reason B is not correct. Personal artwork is part of personal property, not the building property component. Reason C is not correct. Carpeting in common areas is owned by the association and not covered under the unit owner's HO6. Reason D is not correct. Non-permanent area rugs are personal property and not classified as building improvements. Question 9. An insured owns an older cottage covered under an HO8 policy and submits a claim for a broken leaded glass window. Under the policy, how will the insurer indemnify this loss? A. Cover functional replacement cost using modern glass materials. B. Cover the cost to reproduce the original leaded glass design. C. Pay the actual cash value of the damaged window after depreciation. D. Provide full replacement costs without deducting depreciation. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is functional replacement cost using modern materials, as HO8 policies settle losses on a functional replacement basis, rather than strict like-kind replacement or full replacement cost. Reason B is not correct. Replicating original materials is like-kind replacement, not provided by HO8. Reason C is not correct. Actual cash value is not the settlement basis under HO8, which uses functional replacement. Reason D is not correct. Full replacement cost without depreciation is not provided by HO8, which limits to functional replacement. Question 10. A guest slips on an icy front porch at a homeowner's residence, breaks an arm, and then sues for damages. Under Section 2 of the homeowner policy, which condition must be met before personal liability coverage applies? A. It must be legally established that the insured is responsible for the guest's injuries. B. Property damage must exceed the policy's deductible before liability applies. C. The injured guest must have sought medical treatment within a specified time frame. D. The injury must have occurred due to a peril named in Section 1 of the policy. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is legal liability. Section 2. Liability coverage applies only when the insured is legally obligated to pay for a covered bodily injury, unlike medical payments which pay regardless of liability. Reason B is not correct. Liability coverage is not subject to a property deductible requirement. Reason C is not correct. Medical treatment timing relates to medical payments coverage, not liability. Reason D is not correct. Section 2. Liability is not limited to named perils from Section 1. Question 11. Under the DP1 basic form, which peril is defined as an explosion originating within the dwelling rather than from an external source? A. External explosion. B. Internal explosion. C. Lightning. D. Smoke damage. The correct answer is B. This option is correct because DP1 names internal explosion and explosion originating inside the dwelling as one of its limited covered perils. Reason A is not correct. External explosions originate outside the dwelling and are not listed as a DP1 covered peril. Reason C is not correct. Lightning is a covered peril, but the question asks specifically about an explosion within the dwelling. Reason D is not correct. Smoke damage is not separately covered as a named peril under DP1. Question 12. Which of the following perils, newly added under the DP2 broad form, addresses damage resulting from the sudden escape of water or steam from interior plumbing systems? A. Falling objects. B. Accidental discharge of water or steam. C. Earthquake. D. Vandalism. The correct answer is B. This option is correct because DP2. Broad form extends DP1 by adding coverage for accidental discharge or overflow of water or steam from plumbing, heating, or air conditioning systems. Reason A is not correct. Falling objects is another DP2 addition, but does not address plumbing systems. Reason C is not correct. Earthquake remains excluded under DP2 broad form. Reason D is not correct. Vandalism is not a newly added peril under DP2 broad form. Question 13. Under the DP3 special form, what coverage basis applies to the dwelling structure and personal property, respectively? A. Named perils for both dwelling and personal property. B. Open perils for dwelling and named perils for personal property. C. Open perils for personal property and named perils for dwelling. D. Open perils for both dwelling and personal property. The correct answer is B. This option is correct because DP3 provides open peril coverage for the dwelling and other structures, while personal property remains covered on a named broad form peril basis. Reason A is not correct. DP3 is not limited to named perils for the dwelling structure. Reason C is not correct. Personal property is not covered on an open perils basis under DP3. Reason D is not correct. Personal property does not receive open peril coverage in DP3. Question 14. A landlord purchases a DP3 dwelling policy with a coverage limit of $150,000. During renovation, lumber and roofing materials intended for use in repairing the dwelling are stored on the premises. A windstorm damages a portion of those stored materials. Which coverage provision applies to this loss? A. Coverage A, dwelling. B. Coverage B, other structures. C. Coverage C, personal property. D. Coverage D, fair rental value. The correct answer is A. The dwelling coverage extends to materials and equipment on premises for construction or repair of the insured dwelling, so coverage A applies. Reason B is not correct. Other structure coverage is only for buildings separate from the dwelling, not on-site building materials. Reason C is not correct. Personal property coverage excludes materials intended for use in the dwelling's construction or repair. Reason D is not correct. Fair rental value covers lost rent, not damage to stored building materials. Question 15. A landlord's tenant constructs a detached storage shed 30 feet from the insured dwelling on the same premises and uses it to store business equipment. A fire destroys the entire shed. Under a DP2 policy, is the loss covered and why? A. Yes, other structure coverage applies because the shed is detached and on the premises. B. No, business use exclusion applies to other structures used for business purposes. C. Yes, it's covered under personal property as tenant's equipment. D. No, it must be claimed under dwelling coverage since it's within the premises. The correct answer is B. Other structures coverage excludes buildings used in business operations. Since the shed was used for business, the policy excludes the loss. Reason A is not correct. Other structure coverage excludes structures used for business purposes. Reason C is not correct. Personal property coverage applies to movable contents, not to a tenant's business structure. Reason D is not correct. Dwelling coverage only applies to the insured dwelling itself, not detached business use sheds. Question 16. An owner has a DP2 policy that provides actual cash value for personal property. The owner wishes to insure contents for full replacement cost rather than ACV. Which endorsement must be added to achieve this? A. Broad theft coverage endorsement. B. Increased limit of liability endorsement. C. Replacement cost on personal property endorsement. D. Ordinance or law coverage endorsement. The correct answer is C. The replacement cost endorsement for personal property upgrades coverage from ACV to replacement cost for contents under a DP policy. Reason A is not correct. Broad theft coverage only extends theft peril but does not change valuation from ACV to replacement cost. Reason B is not correct. Increased limit endorsement raises policy limits but does not alter valuation method. Reason D is not correct. Ordinance or law coverage applies to building code upgrades, not to personal property valuation. Question 17. A DP3 policy has coverage A of $100,000 and coverage D set at 20% of coverage. AA windstorm renders the dwelling untenable, causing a loss of $1,500 in monthly rent for 3 months. Under coverage D, how much will the insurer pay for fair rental value lost? A. $4,500. B. $6,000. C. $20,000. D. $45,000. The correct answer is A. Coverage D pays for lost rental income during the period of restoration, up to 20% of coverage A. Here the loss is $1,500 multiplied by 3 equals $4,500, which is under the $20,000 limit. Reason B is not correct. That amount assumes 4 months of loss rather than 3 months. Reason C is not correct. This is the 20% policy limit, not the actual lost rent calculation. Reason D is not correct. That figure reflects 45% of coverage A and is not applicable. Question 18. Which of the following is typically shown in the declaration section of a commercial property policy? A. Deductible amount. B. Coinsurance percentage. C. Peril definitions. D. Contractual liability exclusion. The correct answer is B. The coinsurance percentage is a key element listed on the declarations page of a commercial property policy, indicating the required ratio of insurance to value. Reason A is not correct. The deductible amount is an endorsement feature or part of policy conditions rather than a core declarations field. Reason C is not correct. Peril definitions are found in the insuring agreement and policy definitions section, not on the declarations page. Reason D is not correct. Contractual liability exclusions are part of the policy's exclusion section, not the declarations. Question 19. Which of the following is included in the term business personal property under a commercial property policy? A. Machinery and equipment used in operations. B. Land owned by the insured. C. Foundations of the building. D. Underground piping beneath the building. The correct answer is A. Business personal property under a commercial property policy includes machinery and equipment owned by the insured and used in operations at the insured premises. Reason B is not correct. Land is not considered business personal property. It is an excluded real property element. Reason C is not correct. Foundations are part of the building's permanent structure and are not business personal property. Reason D is not correct. Underground piping is part of the land or foundations, not business personal property. Question 20. Which of the following best describes personal property of others coverage under a commercial property policy? A. Coverage for property the insured owns off premises. B. Coverage for property owned by others at the insured's premises, but for which the insured is legally liable. C. Coverage for the insured's business personal property in transit. D. Coverage for customers' personal property lost or damaged outside the premises. The correct answer is B. Personal property of others coverage protects property belonging to others while it is at the insured's premises, and the insured is legally liable for its care, custody, or control. Reason A is not correct. Coverage for the insured's own property off-premises is a separate inland marine or off-premises extension, not personal property of others. Reason C is not correct. Coverage for business personal property in transit falls under inland marine or transit coverage, not personal property of others. Reason D is not correct. Coverage outside the premises is excluded from personal property of others, which only applies on the described premises. Enjoyed this practice test? Tap like, hit subscribe, and share it with a classmate. Got a question we should tweak? Comment below. We read them all. Find full practice exam books in the description or at ExamPrep.School.